in retrospect, we could spin a story and say we knew and we did, careful. We didn't. We just went to the pub and said, okay, how about that? Let's do that then.
If you pay too much attention to those opinions, it's difficult to survive. It's just at some point you gotta, filter them out, because there would be always someone who complains about something.
And the worst thing is that they are always right. The job of a CTO back then is to say, okay, things are going well, but they will stop going well because it's too comfortable. We are losing our competitive edge. We could have made a lot more out of it from a business perspective, but I think it's good that we didn't. It gave us this breathing space.
This is the conversation with Jan Macháček, a notable figure in the Scala community, CTO of Cake Solutions, and later principal engineer at Disney Streaming. Recently, he founded his gaming studio, Dream on a Stick. You can already get his latest game, Copy, from Steam or other game stores. As we are experimenting with the content length, this time we divided the conversation in two parts. The first one is Jan's history in Cake Solutions and later acquisition and his transition to Disney. And in the second part, we'll talk about his story so far in the gaming industry. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation at least as much as I did. I'm really excited to tell you the truth about the conversation that we are about to have. I have so many questions, and I think that it would be so interesting to our listeners, viewers. Your career path so far, at least, who knows what's gonna happen in the future, is so interesting. And so maybe what we could do, why don't we start not really from the beginning, but maybe from the middle.
That would take us a very long time back.
Yeah, maybe from the middle. Could you tell us, how did it happen that you became a CTO at Cake Solutions?
That's okay. Before I jump into it, I will, of course, but just as a point of really amusing anecdote, yesterday I was just browsing the interwebs and someone posted a picture of Norton Commander. I thought that was my time, 2 blue panels, one on the left, one on the right.
I still use it sometime. Midnight Commander, on those incarnations, I got stuck to this UI somehow.
Yep. I'm on Total Commander. I can't just... I'm sorry, I have... So, we'll get to game dev in a minute, or later in the stream, but I'm the only one in the company who does 2-panel file management. Everyone else is looking at me going, what sort of dinosaur are you? Which brings us to how I became a CTO of Cake Solutions. Well, it's a long story, and it starts roughly around 20, 30 years ago in the stone age of IT history, with 2-panel commanders, like Norton Commander, that was my thing, and then brief period of Windows Commander, and then Microsoft said you can't call it Windows Commander, so it became Total Commander. Back then I was in a company in Czech Republic. The company was doing COBOL. I wasn't, even though I had a brief period with COBOL. So if it's ever required, I think I can. No, I can't. But I can tell COBOL, right? And I don't want to touch it, but I've seen it, and that was enough. Anyway, I was doing Object Pascal and Delphi, and it was all really exciting, but I wanted to see something different, this internet thing. I thought, okay, well, let's try do almost like an internship or work experience. I think it was called work experience abroad. So I sent out CVs, and ultimately I did an interview with this company called Cake Solutions, and it was really cool. They sent a picture of this wonderful Victorian mill. I thought, that's it, gold pot. This is big solid company in a big solid mill. And then I arrived, and yes, the mill was there. That's true. What I didn't realize is that the mill isn't the company. The mill is like a business, office space. And we had one tiny cupboard office in that mill with no windows. So I arrived and I thought, what is this place? add to it the house that I lived in, shared with 3 other absolutely brilliant housemates. But my room was so small that when I laid down on my bed, my feet could touch one wall and my head could touch another wall. So there was I thinking, maybe this was a mistake. Anyway, we did programming, I did programming, everyone did programming. And from that moment, the minute you open your computer, it all becomes familiar again. You're like, okay, calm, I can now relax. It's the same IDE, it's the same language, it's the same computer. So I did programming, and back then, Cake Solutions were 3 people. So
wow.
Those were the 3 of us. And
okay,
thinking back at it, okay, we were engineers, but we had no idea. I mean, I can say that now. Going back, it's like, no idea. We jumped into projects that I would not touch now. In the sense that now, with this knowledge, I would say, no. There's so much danger in this. We can't do this. And we certainly can't do this with 3 people. And you, customer, if you want, mobile phone tracking. So we did a fantastic app which was running, it was a Java ME running on a Nokia phone that provided, essentially you would send it a text SMS, right? Those were the days. You would send it a text message and our code would receive the text message, parse the request. There was a GPS receiver connected to the Nokia's port. It would get the GPS location and it would send SMS back to the server saying, okay, here is where I am. And the company was using, our client was using that to do vehicle tracking. Again, in the days before mobile internet connection, in the days before anything, really.
So what year was that, roughly?
It must have been 2000, just after the dot-com crash, so like 2002, right. 2001.
Right.
So absolutely crazy. That Nokia phone, I was moving recently, I found it.
Wow.
And it boots up, it turns on, it connects. It's indestructible. So it survived 24 years of evolution and it still works. So that was one example. Absolutely amazing project. Another one so this was Java ME, and we did a Windows sort of native app for another customer in the US. Flew out to the US, survived a tornado, as one does. So we were in a hotel and then we had to evacuate on a very short notice. So those were some exciting times. And then, we did, Java ME, we did Object Pascal with Delphi, then we did .NET. We thought, okay, let's do .NET. This is the new cool thing, C#1. And this was all, Microsoft's walled garden back then. It was, it wasn't open source anything. It was, Steve Ballmer was leading Microsoft and said, no, Windows, developers. So we did that, and then we thought, this is getting rather expensive. And we looked at this Java world, and it's like, oh wow, there's so much open source stuff. How about that? So I'm sure some of our listeners, some of your listeners and viewers will know who Rob Harrop is. So Rob Harrop was one of the Cake Solutions people, the 3 of us. And we thought, okay, let's do Spring. So we did Spring Framework. And back then it was this of the, Java Enterprise Development without J2EE, the book by Rod Johnson. So we thought, okay, let's do that. Again, we didn't, in retrospect, we could spin a story and say we knew and we did, careful. We didn't. We just went to the pub and said, okay, how about that? Let's do that then. Okay, let's do that then. So we developed Spring all the way from Spring 1 then to Spring 2, 2.5, 3, and out came the books. Pro Spring 2. And then, as we were writing Pro Spring 2, which was huge effort. You know, it's this thick of a book.
Yeah.
Spring 2.5 got released, and we thought, oh no, let's update this stuff. We had to go back to like months of work and tweak it and update it. Anyway, so years of Spring, and then Rob left to join back then Interface 21, which then became Spring Source, which then became VMware. So that's another story. So I stayed at Cake, and this is where I suppose the hands changed. So this is where Rob Harrop went, okay, I'm gonna do my Interface 21 thing. Jan, why don't you do it? And again, going back to the old idea of, I had no idea. So I said yes. What's the worst thing that could happen? And the rest is really history.
So how big was the company back then?
So back then, I think we were about 10, give or take. And it was, imagine, this is how naive I suppose we were in this business side of things or consultancy side of things. These were people who have literally written the books on the framework, and we didn't make anything of it. I mean, we did. We enjoyed it. Okay, let me be absolutely clear. It was super exciting. Technically, it was really brilliant thing to do. We could have made a lot more out of it from a business perspective, but I think it's good that we didn't. It gave us this breathing space to explore technology and to really accelerate technically where we wanted to be. So you can't say it was a wrong decision. It was a decision, and we were happy with it.
Mm-hmm. But did it influence the way, it surely did influence the way how Cake Solutions back then was perceived, right? Being a consulting company, one of the things that people look at is technical expertise, how knowledgeable those people are in the technology they are using, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it no doubt it helped. And a lot of our clients, later on we found out that they already knew us by looking at the books that we've written, the content that we were producing. So it was a lot easier. We didn't have to fight this uphill battle of proving that we can do it. It was given. It's like, yes, you can do it. Now let's talk money and terms and conditions. So it was a lot easier. And then obviously attracting talent became a lot easier, because we could say, hey, you get to learn all this stuff. And again, maybe this is me, and I hope this was most of the senior, technical leadership, if you want to call it that, at Cake. There was every project has boring bits. It really does. You can't escape it.
Sure. Sure.
There is an invoicing system that needs to produce PDFs. That doesn't sound technically exciting, but we did. We took this chance to say, okay, I hate making PDFs with whatever the framework, whatever the tool was, but let's make an exciting edge around it. So the PDF work is boring and horrible, but we can make it exciting. We can make it technically interesting. And then we can write about it so that, yes, there is a little bit of annoyance, but everything else can be cool and can be exciting and can really push whatever we knew at the time. We every project, I think we learned new things.
Right, that's how it is. And like some people, like I always laugh at it, because like some people say, like, you know what, when you think about business systems and software engineering systems, it's like half of the jobs is sending or receiving JSONs. It's like, yeah, I'm like, that's one perspective of looking at it. So what was the how does the role of the CTO look like at the consulting company? Like that, you said interesting thing. When the moment and the point where you became the CTO, the company was 10 people, and by the time the company got acquired, it had more than 100.
Yeah, we were over 100, about 120.
Yeah, so role definitely changed over time. So if you could shed some light on this, on the role and the responsibilities of the CTO in such a company.
Massively. So in a small company, and even the company that we have now, technically we are all chiefs. But, if you're a CTO of a company with 10 people, you're just kind of really good engineer. That's it. And all that you do with your CEO is just, please, let's make this company work for another month or another 2 months. So yes, the responsibility is delivering, like the core, delivering something that brings value to the customers remains. There's no question. But the scale is completely different. At a company of, less than 10 people, as a CTO or an engineering lead, you can rescue things. Like if things go wrong and you realize that there's a demo in 2 weeks' time and the thing isn't finished, you can rescue. There are things you can do. By the time we were 120, you can't. Never mind 120, even 20 people, you just cannot. If you realize that you have 2 teams, 3 teams of, 5 people working on a thing and you're going to miss the deadline by 1 month, it's a different response that you have to make. You cannot start writing code. You cannot say, okay, come on, let's do it. We can rescue it. So in the Cake Solutions of 10 people, it was mostly pure tech. And I think it really helped. It really helped. Some of the late nights, some of the weekends, and we were all, again, small company. So this was, the core team that stayed with Cake all the way to the end. Ani Chakraborty, he was an amazing engineer. He joined us right after university. I mean, he got the rough treatment as well. So small company, you deliver short bursts. You can do short bursts, and you have such a small team that none of the communication overheads are really there. You don't have to synchronize. All you have to do is to have this small, if you are lucky enough to have this small, brilliant team, you can say, okay, let's do it. And if something goes wrong, you can say, come on, we can do it. And you stay until midnight and you do it. But then as the company grew, the responsibility shifted. So it's not just, let's make sure that the company, can live through another quarter. Your horizon expands and you will start saying things like, what are we going to do next year? Right now we're comfortable. And what we did at Cake is we had this, at least, Guy, Raymond, Annie and me, we had this comfort meter. And every time our comfort meter got too high, as in things are going so well, this is great, we know the tech, everything is going well, we have lineup of customers, we would get uncomfortable. We would say, hey, this is strange. Because generally speaking, if you're a small consultancy, you can be ahead. But then the big consultancies will follow. They'll look at you and go, how come this small company is making all this money? How come they're using Spring? Spring seems to be a big thing. We jump in as well. And it's very difficult to compete with consultancies of, 500 people. They have the capacity. They have very, very polished sales process. They know what they're doing. And they're big. So we always tried to look for what's next. And when things got comfortable, we were like, okay, no, we can't do this. Which is why we left Spring in the heyday of Spring. Everyone was doing Spring. It was great. It was comfortable. We could write Spring apps. We were the experts in some sense of the word. But then we decided to jump into Scala. And again, in retrospect, we were saying that we spent weeks doing the research. We did. It wasn't completely, let's just jump. But yeah, days of Scala, what was it? 2.8. The early IntelliJ IDEA Scala plugin. We're like, okay, let's do it. Let's see something different.
So again, it might have been like 2009, 2010, 2008, something like that?
must have been about two. You're probably right. I don't know. Probably that. Yes, you're right. 2010s, give or take. That sort of timescale. And we continued with our Spring projects, of course. So they were the bread and butter, and they could sustain us. But at the same time, we started pushing more on the Scala things. And we did these sort of Spring Scala abominations. So use Scala. After all, it's JVM, right? But let's use Scala. And no one knew. Back then, again, this was early days. So we didn't... You talk about best practices. And I don't mean to use them as mindless templates that you follow, but it's the experience of other people, other engineers getting burnt. And I'll say, okay, don't do this, bad things will happen to you. We did that with, Spring, and call it J2EE apps or JEE apps. We got ourselves burned. We got ourselves burnt with the early distributed systems. Yes, but by the time we jumped into Scala, we didn't know. So we had to burn ourselves all over again and survive. I think that's the main motivation. So again, the job of a CTO back then is to say, okay, things are going well, but they will stop going well because it's too comfortable. We are losing our competitive edge because other people who have by then learned from our content and our mistakes, we've made the mistakes. Others have benefited from learning from them, which is cool. I don't mind sharing the knowledge, but we are now not significantly better than them because the playing field has leveled. So we have to do something new, something equally difficult, but from scratch.
Yeah, so that is sort of this thing. I think it's called in the lingo this innovator's dilemma, right? You come with something and then you have to let it at some point go and focus on something else, even though that's, as it is at this point, it might be the sort of the main part of your revenue stream. So it's definitely a challenging thing to do, even from the psychological perspective. As you said, you feel comfortable, you see like the revenue is growing. How do you do that, by the way, in terms of, you have some brand, you are being recognized back then as a company doing the Spring applications, have to reach to a new, group of customers and build a little bit of a new identity. How do you do that?
It was so again, all I can tell you is how we've done it. I'm not sure if this is the right way of doing it, but anyway, at the point of switch, so again, Spring is going really well. As you say, it's the source of stable revenue. It's the source of stable client. We have known expertise. By then, a couple of books, conference talks, things were going great. So the sort of exploration of what to do next, we even looked at Erlang. We thought, okay, wow. How about we do Erlang OTP? Maybe that's a thing.
It has its interesting pieces, by the way.
It really is. What was the other language? Elixir was there. That looked okay. Okay, maybe we can.
I like Elixir a lot.
That's
my hobby language, by the way.
It really is. There you go. So there was Ruby. So, okay, maybe we can do Ruby on Rails apps. Maybe we can do Haskell. So we did experiments with Haskell. It was a period which I loved, and okay, this is, hey ho, if you are a CTO of a company, this is one of your benefits. You get to play for a bit. So I played with these things and built reasonably difficult applications just for fun, essentially for blog, for content. Suppose you wanted to do an app that, and we wrote a piece of content on our blog, but we learned. I mean, the main purpose of it was to learn internally. And eventually, we took the path of least resistance. And that happened to be Scala. So it brought this new paradigm, but it's still JVM. So the sell to the rest of the team was, hey, if you get stuck, don't worry. It's still JVM. And we said, yes. immutable, functional, and all that. But we're saying that's all true, but it's still JVM. So you can do anything that you want still. If you need to fall back into Java, if you want to mix Scala and Java modules, you can. So that's how we slowly started. And at that time, most of my time was spent on writing new content internally to get the team excited, because it was exciting. It's a new language. Nearly most people, almost all people, like new, shiny new toys. And to the customers, sort of, it wasn't directly addressing the business customers, but it was again building this undergrowth of expertise. So it was to say, this is what we used to do in the past, and these are the problems we faced. Here's what you can do now. It was a little bit of smoke and mirrors, because again, as you say, even back then it was JSON in, or maybe XML back in the day, XML/JSON in, go into a database, and XML, JSON, or HTML out. So, does that need to be massively parallel? Does that need to be scalable? Not really. And again, computers are extremely fast these days. It's unbelievable. So, most of the things that people write, again, this is my heresy, but most of the things that people write, one machine with one database, and you're fine. And when that becomes a problem, cool, that's a good problem to have. So anyway, but what I did say is, look, you can parallelize this. We now have these, multi-threaded, multi-core processors. Why don't you make most of it? So that was the spin. For the customers, they wanted to hear, okay, let's make most of our servers. For the programmers, it was, this is cool. You can be the cool people. You can be the wizards. Functional programming, and then we replaced an abstract bean factory with a monad, and everyone felt 1 million times more clever. But yeah, that was the process. So again, it's more education and communication, right? Technical expertise, yes, but people have to follow and believe that you can do it. People have to understand what you're saying. You can't just say, this thing, functional programming better. Maybe, who knows? But you have to explain, you have to bring people along for the story. Yeah, both technically, I know you could say there's objective measurement. You can objectively say, is this functional code better than imperative code? And you can construct some objective measurement, but people still follow a story and follow clear communication. Yeah. So I think that was important.
I have some doubts about, I sort of understand that you could probably somehow with sufficient effort, say that something in terms of the, of the code base is objectively better. But I think, in the stark examples when the contrast is very high, it's like you probably can. But I think that a lot of what we say about whether it's better or not is really a matter of taste or organizational culture.
Yeah.
We claim that we are the technical industry, but really a lot of it, taste and let's say the zeitgeist, the mood or the sort of the hype in the industry at a given point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. And even if, and this is what we always used to say, people, we used to even delude ourselves when we say, hey, software doesn't rot. It doesn't rust. Nothing to do with the language. But it doesn't degrade. It's like if you write beautiful software now and it's tested, it's bug-free, for whatever definition of that is, it stays that way. It doesn't get eaten away. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to mow the grass on it. That's so wrong. So the software might be still perfect, but the thing is, you could have done everything right. And then the world around you changes. And all of a sudden, even though everything is right, you haven't done any mistake, it's all beautiful, and now it's different and it's broken. So the cost of change and how you deal with technical debt, which you bring in, and you bring it in because the world has changed, or you didn't understand something. Customer said, I want this button, and you made some other button, and then you love the code, right? It's your baby. So you've written it, and you show the demo, and they say, well, I mean, could we make it a little bit different? And so you're like, wow, you're annoyed, right? Because someone said that the thing that you've written, this masterpiece of technology, is now not the thing that they wanted. So you'll hack it a little bit. You'll go like, okay, I don't want to rewrite this because it's beautiful, but I can nudge it in. And then you nudge it in and you introduce a little edge case, but that's okay because that will never happen. And then you call .unwrap and half of the internet goes down.
Yeah.
It will never happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's so true even in the context of the current conversation, because you mentioned this, connection of Spring and Scala, and I think, like, it sounds today like a heresy if you wrote something like that in Scala, but it didn't. Back in the day, like, I remember those days, like circa 2010. I think the spirit and the general idea behind Scala back then was that it's gonna be better Java, right? You're gonna integrate with the Java ecosystem. And really back then I was working at a company when we were also doing some Scala consulting, and you could easily hire Java developers, and they spend 1, 2, 3 days and they became Scala developers to some extent. Like, they used some of the libraries that were the same, which is exactly it's totally opposite today. Like, it's and I have mixed feelings about that. I know that it might, like, I know that Java became at some point, after Oracle took over Java, everyone was thinking that, well, maybe it's gonna be stagnation, but it wasn't.
Yep, true.
Java started to evolve very, very fast, and Java became better Java in a way, so Scala had to do something with it. But this initial idea was very compelling, and today it's very difficult to hire someone who is not a Scala developer, who is a Java developer, and make them work efficiently in a short period of time in Scala. It's so different. It's like
absolutely different.
Totally different.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The biggest selling point was, I don't know, collections or arrays with map and flat map and filter. That was amazing. It didn't exist back in the days. Java just didn't have it. Now, did we take it to an extreme? We did, because new toy, right? So you write these one-liners, and we loved them. And we loved them at the point of writing them, and then we hated ourselves, because you look at it and you go, what is it? Like, how can it possibly have worked ever? Anyway, so there's a balance. Scala, I think, gave Java the kick. I don't know. So I obviously, have no idea whether someone.
It certainly seems so. Yeah.
But it seems a good coincidence that all of a sudden, hey, we can do lambdas and closures in JVM. Oh, and they are actually quite useful. And then Kotlin came along, which again the promise was less complicated Scala, but better Java. And it all really delivers. I think Kotlin stayed more. I'm not a Kotlin developer, but from what I can obviously see, it's more in the Java thing, Java camp. And then you have Java. Modern Java is great. It looks fantastic. It's nothing like the Java of my old days. But it comes with all the creature comforts. So if you look at latest Spring now, you're like, wow, this is actually really nice again. It's asynchronous, it's functional for all that you can call it, and it's comfortable. If you jump into Scala, I think now if we were, Cake Solutions now, I don't think we dare to make the jump into Scala, because you're not just replacing the programming language. That's usually easy-ish, but it's everything around it. Everything is different. So
Yeah.
That would be, yeah, I suppose you might as well switch into Swift, C++, Python, Rust. The cost would be similar.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. Yeah, you are right. But coming back to this transition, you made an interesting observation about the 10 people company where you could actually hands-on jump in and save the demo or whatever is happening in the code base.
Yeah.
And when the company grows, you said even 20, 30 people,
Yeah.
you cannot do it anymore. So how did you cope with that? It certainly feels like losing some sort of control. You are not in control anymore. Things are starting, they may slip for, because you are not able to really, to look into everything. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, that really wasn't easy. So in the early days, and again, this is before, remember, the year was 2005, 6, right? And yes, there were these agile project management consultancies, but it was all dark magic. Consultants would get wheeled in and they would introduce these rituals that you would all do and go, oh, this is fascinating, but why are we doing this? Aren't we supposed to just deliver the project? Why couldn't we define it? And remind me of that when we get to AIs. Why couldn't we just precisely define what we want and then just make it? Right? How hard can that be? Well, it turns out very. So the transition to a bigger team actually brought with it this transition to bigger projects and bigger complexity of projects. So it was not just technical. Yes, they were difficult, but technical things we can generally solve. What became much harder is to find out what we should be solving. What are the things that we should be typing? And that was tough. I think for me, for Annie, for everyone. Just what do we do with this? How do we communicate with the client? And we tried all these, agile rituals. Okay, clients must attend demos. So you have to come in every, even remotely, but every 2 weeks there's a demo at the end of the sprint. And I think that was beginning of the realization. So I remember to this day we did a sprint demo to a customer and it didn't work. Obviously it was really early stages, but everyone was excited. The customer said, I really want to make sure that this project is a success. I'm sinking so much money into it. So I want to come in, I want to give you the feedback. They bought into the spiel of Agile, and they came in and we showed them a demo and nearly everything failed. Exceptions left, right, and center, and JavaScript errors. And I remember going back, so the clients were super nice about it. They said, no, this is cool, this is only your second sprint. And then we were sort of doing our own, we didn't call it retrospective, we just, went to the pub and complained. And we said, this was me and Guy who said, the customer has just now spent roughly a car's worth of money. They could have bought a car. And we showed them exceptions. And that was such an eye-opener. I thought, wow, yes, you're right. They could have bought, not a fancy car, but a car. Mm-hmm. They could have driven away with it, and they would have gotten, nice glossy brochure with it saying, congratulations on purchase of whatever car. I'm not a car person, so whatever. Congratulations on having this thing now. It's beautiful. It comes with a little air freshener. That's what they paid. And what we delivered was horror. So I think that really pushed me as the CTO and pushed the team leads to say, no, you can't do that. What would you do? What would you do if you went out and bought 10,000, 15,000 pounds, euros, dollars worth of a thing, and you were told that you have to do work for us, as in you have to come to these demos, you have to give feedback, and then you can't give feedback because the thing just doesn't work. So that was a big push. That was a big change, and that was a real focus on more quality and maybe less speed, which was so difficult to push. Again, customers came to a small consultancy because speed, right? You guys can do things. You guys don't have processes. We don't pay for consultants. And then we were slowly starting to the way it felt to me is we were starting to sink towards these big consultancies that say, no, there's a process that we all follow, and you have to follow it, otherwise bad things will happen. And it took me such a long time to realize that bad things really will happen. And the bad things are, disastrous demos like that. It's the ad hoc treatment of every customer. Oh, we do this thing for you, and we do this other thing for you, and we hope for the best. Because we had brilliant technical teams, we delivered, it worked, but it didn't scale. So by the time we broke 25 people, like, okay, we just can't. We have to be a little more rigid, a little more structured internally. Anyway, so I like to think that we were a little better. Now, did we make the usual blunders? Of course we did. We learned. And then, then came the time of BAMTech/Disney.
So before we go to that, we sort of started with this idea of CTO being the most proficient, or one of the most proficient engineers. Then we went into this, because really what you said about this sort of the second stage was starting a focus on processes, standards, things like that. So sort of a different hat from the most proficient engineer in the team. But there's also one interesting fact, and I know that Cake Solutions was pretty strong in this area, and this area is values and culture, especially engineering culture. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what were the values engineering cultures that you wanted to instill, and how did you go about it? Like, how did you make sure that this those culture is really instilled in the organization that by the end was, after all, 120 people?
Yep. No, that also wasn't easy. I think we had it a little bit easier because we were known. So again, if you think back to 10 years ago and you think Scala, there were a few companies in the world that people would think, oh yeah, these guys do Scala, like client work for Scala. Not the research side of things, but this is how you deliver Scala projects. So that helped with our recruitment. And I'm not a brilliant computer scientist, so if you ask me to invert a binary tree, yeah, that's not gonna go well. Even to this day, like mathematics, I will make it work. I will beat it. And we'll get to games. So if you tell me, okay, these two vectors, and I'm like, okay, I'll just fiddle with the minus signs until they sort of align. I'm not an expert. So when it came to recruiting, we didn't really do computer science questions as such. I mean, we did, obviously. You had to show the FizzBuzz. You have to go through that. And you'd be surprised how many people didn't. To this day, I'm amazed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could use it to those people who realize what's going on. So you at the point of FizzBuzz, I think you're measuring how easy is it to communicate with the person and how difficult it is to explain some concepts to them. If you get, let's say you're hiring a senior Scala engineer and you say, okay, let's start with FizzBuzz. They will probably, and what we've seen, the successful ones, inevitably have written FizzBuzz, of course, like, there it is. And then we would start just messing with it for the pure joy of exploring it technically. So, hey, what happens if there is like an infinite stream of fizz buzzes? For all I care. What happens if we want to... It doesn't... What always came through is the actual problem, the fizz buzz. You could say, okay, we know this, but what sort of complexities would we be dealing with in the so-called real world? And you could spin this into, you replace FizzBuzz with, as I bring it up again, PDF generators. That's the boring thing. We know that. But what if you need to generate 10,000 PDFs now in some sort of asynchronous process that they have to go into a disk? Usually the really exciting interviews went along that way. And you could just almost randomly, but it wasn't random. You always could find out that people who we really wanted to work with, they were very practical engineers, down to earth. This computer stuff isn't magic. We would always say, look, it's wires. It is wires. If you have machine here, there's a wire to machine 2. If you want to parallelize something, if you want to distribute something, how are you going to squeeze this thing over this wire? And that always helped. I always find it, to this day, I find it very frustrating when there's magic happening. And someone say, no, you just write this and then the computer will do your bidding. I'm like, I can take it initially, right? It's like, okay, fine. I believe you and I can observe it, but like, how does it do it? It really isn't magic. So I think that was internally one of our core mottos. It's not magic. Like we can figure it out. And if someone comes in and says, there's a new tool, there's a new framework that will fix by magic all these problems that you had before, I like to think that most of our people, if not all, were healthily skeptical. And they were saying, yeah, but what does it do really? And I think that was big part of the engineering culture. Again, internally. Externally, we would say all these things about values and values and something. I'm not a very...
Values, culture, mission.
There you go. I'm not a very corporate person, as you can tell. So, yes, to the outside world, okay, engineering excellence and, exciting projects. But internally, it's like, it's not magic. You can figure it out. We can figure it out. And, you talk about all these support contracts, and some of our clients ultimately signed up to them with, Oracle, just to pick one. So, okay, you're running on JVM or you're running on an Oracle DB, okay, so you have a support contract. But the reality was, when things went down, we got the call, not Oracle. It's like, hey, your thing is broken, you fix it. And yeah, okay, support contract was there as a safety net, but I think this also enabled us to be in that position where we could say, okay, we can try to fix it, and we can try to understand what's going on. And that really, really helped. It was down to earth. It's not shiny new framework will fix it for you. You have to understand what's going on. So yeah, that really helped. And we went to conferences. We took the whoever rose technically, well, okay, let's go to a conference. We always try to bring as many people along for the ride. It's okay, if you want to join in, if you want to do conferences, if you want to do all these exciting things, we'll support you. It's not free. Like, again, consultancy, right? We tried to do things like, okay, let's have Friday as free/open source day for experiments. And commercially it didn't work. We tried. Yeah. But at the same time we said, okay, if you want to go to a conference, or if you have a talk accepted at a conference, of course you go. Like, no question. So I think that really helped, and it pushed people to do exciting things. And they owned a lot of the decisions. The engineering teams owned themselves, and we moved quickly. So if we said, how about we do this? Well, okay, you could have a decision within hours. So I think that really helped. Again, the luxury of a small company, of a privately owned small company, gets more difficult when shareholders are involved.
I mean, 120 people is not that small of a company. A lot of companies start to struggle around when they are, depending on the company, but between 20, 30 to 50 people, around a time where it's not possible to have a founder, or maybe sometimes you have, two co-founders. And at some point they cannot manage directly everything and oversee everything, which is about like 50 people. And you start to need to have some sort of it's either processes, some structure, or maybe middle management, depending on the company, how you go. But you need to introduce something. And that's one of the difficult stages for many companies. So, you saying that you can have a decision within an hour or a few hours for a company that might have been 100 people is still significant achievement. It's still something that, like, I know companies that have problems with that, even with a smaller size.
It's true. We were lucky in a way, because when we started Cake, we were in Manchester, and then we opened a small office in Oxford, just as an experiment. The idea was that we could better serve London, but we don't have to be in London. I didn't want to. Okay. Purely selfishly, I didn't want to be in London. I really didn't want to be in London. And I thought, okay, look, Oxford to London, 15 minutes. It never was 15 minutes. It's like 15 minutes is the time that you get on the timetable. It was always like 1 hour and a half. It's always, but that's by the by. That forced us to build this distributed decisions, even when we were small. So we could still have I think back then we were sort of 20-ish in total. So there was, 15, 12 people in Manchester, and I think it was 6 or 7 of us in Oxford. And then that allowed us to get used to having not in the fancy way, but having not just one central place and still make decisions. Then we actually said, okay, well, we have to have a place in London. So we opened a satellite office in London. Then we opened up in New York, because a lot of our customers were in the US. But by then we better understood what we were getting ourselves into. So we've already practiced the pains. So it was easier. But the pains were there, for sure. The steps for us were, 8 people to 10. 8-10, that was the first break. And then the 20-25 mark, that was hard. And then I think maybe we never got into it, but I think 100 was another transition, or 80 was another transition. By then, as you all know, you have to pay 80 people every month. That's a lot of money. Yeah. And again, the benefits get higher, but the risks scale as well. Company of 5 people, you can do it. You can just give your own money and say, okay, fine, this is horrible this month, but I can do it. 20 people, you can mortgage your house maybe and survive a month. By the time you're 80, you cannot. So again, the questions from our accountant got more pointed. And he said, okay, this is cool. What are you going to do in 3 months? Because in 3 months, in 6 months, you need to have, £1 million only to pay people. Right? Oh yeah, that. Yeah, that's as a CTO, I think you also need to see this.
Yeah, it is difficult for services and consulting companies, because you don't have, like, it is difficult to invest in most of the companies. So most of the companies are sort of the self-funded, and they live from the operational revenue that they generate. And I think that most people, they are just not aware that it's not like, company has 1 year of salaries in a bank. It's like maybe 2 months, maybe 3 if you are a really good company, right?
Yep.
Everything comes from the recurring revenue that
Yep.
hopefully you'd be able to generate.
Yep. Absolutely. So, you're only as good as your last project. You can have all this wonderful history of previous projects and all your customers are happy, but then you mess up one big project and it gets complicated. And it again brings back the comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have, let's say you're a consultancy, you have a really good client, you have successful projects, and all of a sudden half of your company is working for that client.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were having these discussions as well. It's like we have to let go. We get more clients and expand the team, but you can't do it quickly. That takes months. Never mind hiring. And say you decide today that you want to hire someone, it will take you a month to find the person. And then if they're in the UK/EU, okay, easier, quicker. But even then,
Mm-hmm.
People don't move in a month generally.
Yeah. Not in Europe, at least.
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed, not in Europe. And I think it's unfair to expect anyway. But if they're from abroad, which we had lots of people from all over the world, which was amazing and exciting. But then, okay, visas, work permits, you're looking at 3 months before the person can start. And then they need at least 2 months to, get in and get used to some things. It's 5 months. So when you point out the money in the bank, you say, okay, this is going really great. We have a client that's 50% of our revenue. The margins are great, but they can leave. Again, we could have done everything right, but the client encounters a problem, or they decide that they don't want to do this anymore. And there it is. You've done everything right, and yet the problem is yours.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, going back to our comfort indicator, this was started to go off and saying we can't.
Yeah.
So year 2005, I was writing code. That was it. That was my job, to write code. What code? We can figure it out pretty quickly because the customers were also small, so they could very flexibly and meet. They could move quickly. To all of a sudden there's 20 people. It's like, okay, yes, writing code. Yes, I still want to do it. I still enjoy it. But now, more about what sort of process do we have so that, because I can't rescue it anymore. I can't rescue it. Annie can't rescue it. Connell can't rescue it. Alex Lashford can't rescue it. Michal Janošek can't rescue it, and that's saying a lot. What do we do now? So yeah, that was a transition, and it just gets, as you say, the potential problems get less frequent, but when they do, they are juicy.
Mm-hmm. So this exposition to a single customer, say over 50% for a single customer, does that lead us to BAMTech and the eventual acquisition?
Yeah, I suppose it does, because you're right. Before the acquisition, this was actually, we were all really exposed to BAMTech.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of projects, lots of Scala work. And it was getting, again, they were great client, no problems, exciting work, interesting work, but it was, this is dangerous territory. Really is dangerous territory. Anyway, we were at what conference? It was a conference down in Texas. And then we have a call that says, "Hey, do you want to meet in New York?" Now, okay, do you say, "Oh no, it's very inconvenient. We've already booked our flights to your biggest client"? You say, "No, of course we can. Let's fly to New York." I hated it. I like my, when I make plans, I like my plans. I don't like this. I had a window seat. I like window. Anyway, this is a different story. Anyway, we met, and that was essentially that was the offer times. Like, okay, we would like to do this. Would you be open to being acquired? And we were like, okay, let's talk for real. What would it take? What would happen? How would it work? And in the end, we decided that this is actually a pretty exciting thing to do. You obviously consider the business opportunity, right? But also, we didn't want to give up what we were doing. But we've already done lots of projects with BAMTech by then. The team knew, like our team knew the BAMTech team, so it wasn't just another client. They were aware that that we can communicate, that they are doing exciting things, that they sort of can gel together nicely. So in the end, we said, okay, let's do it. It took about a year.
Oh wow!
It's a long process. Not because anyone
was that because of paperwork or because you were sort of thinking about that?
No.
Discussing this internally.
No, decision was made, I think, within an hour. So yeah, the decision between us to say, okay, yes, that was quick.
In a pub.
Ultimately, yes.
to continue the previous part.
Indeed, yes. So that was quick, but then not paperwork as such, but it wasn't like any party was stalling, but things really got complicated, and the detail that I think both sides got into were pretty significant. So it wasn't completely easy. Sure, okay, I want to buy a company. Okay, sure, here, have some money. Okay, now I have it. Which I think was good. I mean, it wasn't good because, I would have had a little more hair by now, maybe. But it was really, it's like, okay, we need to understand, we had support contracts with our clients. So we made systems for them. We said, okay, yes, we made the system, and there's a contract that says we will continue supporting it. So we needed to make sure that we look after as much as we can after our clients. Say, okay, heads up. We couldn't quite say it out loud, right? You can't quite say, hey, we're getting acquired. So knew that Disney owned a significant portion of BAMTech and had the option to acquire the rest of it. But they exercised the option very quickly after this acquisition. So we then became Disney. It was called Disney Streaming Services back then. Mm-hmm. So we started working on Disney streaming. It was against brand new problems. So I don't want to belittle e-commerce. It's super difficult. But if you cannot buy a widget, you'll try again. Like, okay, right? Amazon says, suppose it says, HTTP 500. You'll go like, well, okay, I shouldn't be buying things anyway, or I'll look again 10 minutes later. That's cool. And then you have, again, BAMTech /Disney streaming services were doing on-demand video, but also real-time video, sports. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not a sports person. I'm not a sports fan. I know I'm in Manchester, but, whether it's red or blue, I really don't care.
Yeah.
But some people really care. Imagine that they start watching, or they're looking forward to this match, and they get an HTTP 500. They get angry. Like, if Amazon is broken, you and I might be annoyed, but not angry. If it's your team, this important match, you are angry. So that was an eye-opener. Some of the super exciting technical challenges with latencies, right? So you could be watching, again, just so I don't get into super details, you could be watching a United game on a terrestrial TV with a little stick on your roof, an antenna. And then you're watching this, it's the summer, you have your windows open, and your neighbor is watching over streaming. Now you on the antenna will probably see the goal ahead of your neighbor. Now, that can cause problems. So imagine you're watching your favorite team, your favorite game. You hear from your neighbor, yay! You're like, what yay? Super. I mean, there are things that you can do, and there are things that you just cannot do. It's like that's the reality. It just takes so long for the electrons to make their way again through these wires to you. But these were also exciting problems. We encountered hard deadlines that we never thought exist. We didn't encounter them before. You're working on a client's project, and if something takes longer, okay, well, you're gonna have to launch your e-commerce thing later, a week later. But then, for example, the baseball season starts sometime in winter, but on that day. The fact that your system isn't ready doesn't change anything. They will start playing. So that's the level of deadlines. Whole new experience.
You became back then a senior principal engineer at Disney Plus. So what were the responsibilities of a person on such position? Like, what are your daily job like?
So it was more to imagine what we could do. So either you could solve real hard problems, as in, okay, this is what we need to do. We don't know how to do it. We don't know if it can be done. Let's go and figure it out. So that was one of the challenges. Or another thing is, what do we currently have that, and this is going to sound very obscure, what do we currently have that we don't know is extremely valuable? So one of the super interesting projects that we did is, so there are, this again, before AI assistants, right? This thing didn't exist. So like, how could we make sure that we can share knowledge together? You can do it in a company of 120 people, cool, no problem. In a company of, I don't know, 1,000 engineers, it's really hard. You're programming something, and there's a pretty good chance that someone else in the company, some other team, has already done this very thing, same thing. Let's say you encounter a problem. You're writing to Kinesis, and it's too slow, or it drops messages. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And you're scratching your head, going, oh, "How does it work?" Surely, you cannot be the first one. There's a really low chance that you're the first one to encounter this problem. So one of the challenges was, how do we fix it? Now, back then, again, LLMs didn't exist, which is a shame, because now we would have gone, okay, let's have a company-wide LLM that you could ask, you can train on our code base, you could ask it. We didn't. So what we did with a couple of other engineers is, we said, okay, how about we make a thing that would connect you to another team that has done this very same thing. So we made this system that could predict how bad or how good your code was, or even portions of your code. So the idea would be that you would, say, submit a pull request and would say, hey, these files, this section here, we think it's really bad. We don't know how to fix it. We like, the system doesn't understand. But we know that there's another team that did really similar thing. Why don't you talk to them? So this was essentially LLMs, but on humans. All we did was do the connection, and we could say, okay, your code is really bad in this aspect. We think it's going to perform poorly. We have no evidence for it, but we suggest that you talk to these guys. Or actually, we know that there's another repo in the company that has better code in this aspect. And it was up to you to figure out who owns that repo and, Slack them. So that was super exciting. It was, we have something extremely valuable. we have significant volume of data now, because we know from operating the system, we know the error rates, we know how often people get paged when the thing goes down. We can pull all this together. So not only is it your code is bad because code, but this way of writing, really does not correlate. You're right, you're doing kinesis or whatever it is. This other thing is doing kinesis. They are really good. Their error rates are really low. Your error rates are really high. That's not right. You're doing something wrong. Why don't you connect? So that was super exciting.
It sounds exciting. But I was wondering, like, with the company, Disney being a company as large as it, as it was back then, it's like, was it really, was it difficult to connect to all those various data sources? Like the stories that I'm hearing from many people innovating, because that's what you did. You were innovating within the company, building something that you figured would be useful. Like a lot of people tell me that, like, and I work with some of those, larger organizations. It's like, one thing is the technological aspect. And more often than not, it's actually easier than all the other stuff. Like some people couldn't even imagine that you might have not single repository. I'm not talking about the repository. I'm talking about the repository source management system. Like they have like 6 of them, different ones. GitHub Enterprise, GitHub Hosted, different kinds of, privileges. And you need to wait for someone to give you access. Sometimes it might take because of the procedurals behind it, it might take 3 months to get access to some system and things like that, right?
I think maybe this is me. I was just lucky. Maybe I was the forgotten. We were the acquired thing. So no one really knew what this thing does. So we had access to everything.
Wow.
Maybe not right access, and I was very careful, and maybe we didn't have access to everything. That I don't know. But we had access to a lot of things that we maybe shouldn't even have seen. Again, definitely not secrets or anything like that, but there were a lot of things that we could do. And this is what I really enjoyed about BAMTech and Disney. There were parts of it that still felt like the old Cake Solutions. Things could happen quickly. You could genuinely talk to someone, and I think this is the exciting thing. I don't know about other big companies, but at least back at Disney and BAMTech, it was people would figure out a way to make it happen for you. Rather than say, oh no, you can't do this. Oh no, this is going to be difficult and you have to go through an approval. People would say, okay, fine. Let's try and do it, and we'll only stop if we find that it cannot be done for, good reasons. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the thing that really enabled us to deliver, goodness me, to deliver Disney Plus in COVID. Mm-hmm. COVID came, when did UK lock down? In March, I think.
Yeah, I think most of the world went into lockdown about between February and March.
Yeah, so I think we were one of the later ones, but it didn't matter, because all of a sudden we were still in the office on Friday. I said, okay, we suggest that you take all your computers back home, and let's see how. And Monday we're like, okay, there you go, you're now at home. And when did Disney Plus? It launched a month after that. When was it? Was it May or April? I don't remember. But in any case, a few months after, and we launched it, and we were all at home, and we all VPN'd in, and that was some pretty crazy times. But what I mean is, it was an achievement for a big company to transition quite so smoothly to a completely new way of actually dealing with the world. So that was pretty exciting, and the launch happened and it worked. And it was interesting and a little bit frustrating to see. Okay, people were excited. It worked, cool. But I remember watching and reading through Reddit threads and saying, "Oh, how come they couldn't have done any testing at all?" I'm like, you don't even know.
Yeah. I mean, like, you can always find someone who complains. It's like almost like it's impossible if you pay too much attention to those opinions. I mean, it's difficult to survive. It's just at some point you gotta, filter them out, because there would be always someone who complains about something.
And the worst thing is that they are always right. This thing didn't work for me. You should have done this. You're right. We should have.
Yeah.
But yeah, the challenge is to knowing this should have done before. After the fact, it's easy.
Yeah.
Cool, no problem. After the battle, everyone is a general.
Yeah. So that is interesting. In my mind, it's an interesting juxtaposition. Your work at Disney and the culture there, because on the one hand side, we started with that you have so many potential problems, so many risks. Like you said, you might have sensitive information that you were not even aware of, and you have to have some processes in case you acquire data that you shouldn't have, things like that, all different aspects of those problems. And at the other end of the spectrum, you were saying that things could really move quickly at Disney, and decision could be made, things could be made to work very fast. What do you think was the secret sauce behind it? Because what I'm seeing is like the typical thing is that as things get more complex and the risk profile elevates, companies tend to start moving in a glacial pace. Like, things tend to take weeks, months, years. Everything becomes a 1-year project or more. What do you think was the secret sauce for Disney to make it work?
I think a real pleasure was the Disney internal legal counsel team. They could make things work. My impression, and this is, again, I didn't know, my impression was there's the internal lawyer team, they'll just say no to everything. But no, it was almost the opposite. It's like, okay, we'll figure it out. What do you want to do? It was just, I think a lot of the times I had to forget that it's a big company. I had to forget you hear all this popular media, right? Big company does this, big company does that, and it's all evil. It's like, I had to keep reminding myself that it's actually really not. You're dealing with these individual people and they are there to do the right thing. So I think, again, the culture was a lot of the secret sauce. It's like, again, at least when I was there, it was all, okay, let's do things. We want to do things, we want to make it work, we want to make it right for our customers. And it was exciting time at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. New service launched. The world is locked down, right? No one goes out. And so everyone does streaming. Everyone wants to watch something. And we had pretty cool content. We even went to, there's a Disney office in London, and they have all the Star Wars figurines. They have the original Millennium Falcon that we sat down until we got kicked out.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like, you can't sit in this. Okay, we didn't know. I'm sorry.
Geeks Paradise.
Yeah, it was amazing. But this is also the thing that really helped to gel the teams. We were still building something exciting. We were solving difficult technical things, and people were genuinely trying to do the right thing. So I think you can see that, right? You can see that you might not succeed, but you can see that everyone around you, your management, wants to do the right thing. I think that really buys you so much leeway. Inevitably, someone is going to do something stupid. They always do. But if you can understand why, and if you can even understand their motives, I think it's a lot easier to forgive and say, okay, fine, that's cool, I get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the other way around is to put some preventive measures that do exactly this. They make company move in a glacial pace, because for everything you have process, some acceptance and things like that. It's either one or the other, right? The trick, I think, is how do you make sure that people have some leeway, and at the same time, the terminal mistakes are not being done, or at least very costly ones, like extremely costly ones.
I think
that's the trick.
It is the trick, and that's why senior management gets paid the bucks. Because
right.
they ultimately mop up, right? It's ultimately their job to deal with big, and the mistakes are big. You know, if someone says something stupid, reveals, goodness me, if you were to reveal that Disney is planning to do something next month, oh, that's just horror.
Mm-hmm.
These things don't happen, of course, but when they do, I think this is where you start, you know, really the mop-up work. And you want to prevent these things from happening, and you can do it by restrictions, as you say. You know, you can say, you know, strictly need-to-know basis. If your team only knows this tiny little bit, you even have no idea how your API is used, that's one way. Or you can try to, and you have to balance this. I don't know. I wouldn't want to do it. Because sure, you can trust these people, and you know they're all good engineers, but it's probability, right? In 100, if there's 0.01% chance of someone doing something malicious, well, in a team of 100 people,
happen.
you will probably never find that person. In a team of 10,000, there's probably one. There's also a big difference between consultancy company and a product company. So Disney, you make a product, and warts and all, it's yours all the way to the end, which is the thing that you don't often see in a consultancy. At least the one we were doing. We were usually doing these super exciting things, the risky things, the cool things, if you like. But we rarely stayed. So once a POC was delivered to the client, they said, okay, we have it now. This is cool. We now have our engineering team. We learned from you, but quite honestly, you're really expensive. We can now get our people, our teams to continue. So that was cool, but the bad side of it is that we never saw the consequence of some of our decisions. The thing that looks really cool in a POC, and you know the POCs got complicated, it wasn't throwaway code, but there are some decisions that we might not have made if that meant getting woken up every other night because something broke. But we never got to see those. Nature of consultancy, you just don't. Now Disney / product company is different in the sense that yes, there's exciting POCs, you start a new project, right? And it's exciting, it's cool, it's new, but then it has to live in production. And you know, it grows these hairs and warts because it does, and there are bugs that you didn't even think that you would encounter, and the bugs might not be in your code, right? This is a third-party library. A database has a bug, of course it does. And but it's you get woken up. So you make different engineering decisions. Again, the speed is different. The kind of code that you write is different. And some people just don't enjoy that. To some people, they want to see the new thing. I want to try this new thing. I don't really care that have to write a special error handler for when the memory is less than however many bytes. That's boring to them. It doesn't mean that it's boring, but it's like it's a solved problem. Like it's not an exciting new thing. It's a known thing. If you told me at the time of specification, I would have written that if line, this one line of code. You didn't know, I didn't know. You now found out. Okay, add that one line and you're done. So a lot of people left because of the range of projects all of a sudden got limited. It's whatever Disney wants, that's what you're making. To be clear, there are tons of projects. But the scope is the same. The technology stack is chosen. And, you know, when we switched from Java to Spring, from Java to Scala, we stayed on the JVM. And it wasn't easy. It was it was a tough transition. Imagine you couldn't, and that was a company of 20 people. I'm sure there is someone at Disney, there's someone anywhere in the world who would look at the things that we have now and says, why couldn't we now write it in name a language? And they are right, it would be better. They're absolutely right, but you can't, because there's the legacy of code, there's teams that you have to bring along, and there are new problems that you don't know about yet. And yeah, this is again another reason. What I kept saying is, if the acquisition didn't happen, I think Cake would probably be doing something else now. Now, okay, yeah. I don't know whether it would be Rust. It probably would be Rust now, knowing myself. But we would have changed stack completely again by now.
Right.
I think a lot of people missed that and they left to do other things.
Interesting, because I wanted to touch a little bit on this topic of the future. And I was wondering about, one of my questions was, how would Cake solutions look like today? But we'll get into it. I mean, the interesting thing is, like, I think that, like, I know it's a little bit, I'm a little bit hesitant to quote Steve Jobs, because it's sort of the cliche, but he had one of those video snippets when he had, and he was really putting it in a negative perspective. Like, he was putting, the differentiation between consultants and the product people. And he said, like, when you're a consultant, you see only a slice of a steak or whatever. But there is some truth in that to really be able in software engineering to judge some of your decisions retrospectively, it's not 1, 2, 3 months. Sometimes it takes 2, 3 years before you can realize, well, what we did wasn't really that good from the time's perspective. But you have to make this distance. You have to work on this team, on this product, when it sort of became legacy, and you see that there are some, pros and cons to the choices that you made 3 years ago.
Yep. I think this is what some of the early Cake projects, they were very long lived. And some of them, actually, there was one that I think even had version 2 and possibly, did it have version 3? Version 1 was .NET. Again, C#1. And then version 2 was Java, Spring. It did the same thing, same functionality. And the reason for the rewrite was that, again, even the client moved. When we delivered the system to them, it did what they wanted. But then, because they got this new tool, they thought we could do this other business that we didn't know about. And at that point we said, this is so different that we have to tackle it as a new system, but it had to continue. So the business operated on version 1, and version 1 still kept moving forward. We tried to restrict it, right? But they said, look, we need this feature. Version 2 is going to take you 6 months to write, so you have to keep maintaining version 1. And then at the same time we were writing version 2, and then we did a transition on the weekend. I think that was really, really cool lesson. So that was one example where we lived with the choices. And we were forced to do some decisions, and some of them turned out to be good, some of them turned out to be less than ideal, as they always do. But that was an exception. In consultancy, that genuinely was an exception. A lot of our other projects were Steve Jobs, he made another video, said, he's right. He's absolutely right. As a consultant, you only see a slice. But then again, your job as a consultant is to try to imagine all the things that touch your slice. So yes, you will never be solving super deep, one thin layer of a problem, but you'll touch many layers as you're writing this system. And, you know, good consultants are able to use the experience that they have and say, okay, we think this will cause problems and we can work around. You don't even say we think this will cause problems. You just solve it. I think one of my favorite authors, again, back from the day, Joel Spolsky, he's the... What did he... I don't know where he worked. Maybe even Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, that's right. Yes, absolutely. So some of his books were absolutely right. And, you know, when he was saying about the code that you look at as you're rewriting this thing, you know, you, consultant, deliver this beautiful piece of code. And then you look at the same code a year later and it's ugly and it has, you know, tons of if then else statements, spaghetti around it. He says, that's real bugs that you saw. It's the fact that, I don't know, you pop up I think his example is you pop up a dialogue on like a Czech version of Windows and you type in weird Czech characters or Polish characters. He would have said Polish characters. Yeah. And then it crashes. It's like, you didn't know. As a consultant, you wouldn't have known. This knowledge is the years of real operation. And when you either never get to see it, or when you foolishly say, I'm going to rewrite this, you will have thrown that away. Because this stuff is, you know, that will not be commented, that will not be documented. It will be, there'll be some ticket, but you'll never know. So, I think it's a different mindset, right? Or it's a different experience that you'll have. As a consultant, exciting new projects, lots of different ones, and you can switch tech. And, you know, you're riding on your experience to tell you that this will be painful and this will not. As a product company, that's a long run. And code that you have written as a consultant, every 2 weeks you can sell. You send an invoice, right? There's code, give me money. Code that you write as a product company, that's just, you know, liability. Until it becomes a product that someone buys, it's not worth anything.
This is the end of the first part of our interview with Jan Macháček. We'll follow up with the second part, where we dig into his story so far with Dream on a Stick in the gaming industry. Thank you for watching and listening.